All right, Rich, it says we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Channelpro Weekly, episode 100 live stream edition. That's right. Mr. Rich Freeman has flown all the way. Oh, by the way, this is my counterpart, Mr. Rich Freeman, executive editor, also Captain Serious himself in the flesh.
And now you can at last see the serious expression on my face at all times.
No, he flew all the way from Seattle to be here today, so we do a special live episode of Channelpro Weekly. But because many of you may not know, because I don't think we've actually posted an episode yet, going forward, all as many as we can possibly do anyway. Channelpro Weekly will be live streamed each and every week. We do an episode. So you'll be able to tune in and watch while we go through the news. And being live on video is going to give us some opportunities to do some fun things. We'll be able to show you some of the news stories we're talking about. We'll be able to have museum tickets that I can hold up. Look, check it out. This is the 1972 or whatever it happened to be. Mr. Kitty may make an appearance here and there. And yeah, it's going to be fun, Rich.
Absolutely.
So, Rich, how long have you wanted to do a video episode, or at least a video format?
Minutes and minutes, actually. It's been a dream of mine since 10 a.m. this morning easily.
Yeah, so this is a little unfair because Rich actually already does a video show here on YouTube and for Channelpro called 5 Minute Roundup, which you can do every week, and you do that with Eric Simpson, right?
I do.
Go ahead, plug your 5 minute roundup, even though it's not really 5 minutes, it's actually more like 10. But
yeah. And truth in advertising, we always say 5 minutes or thereabouts. Yeah, it is a brief. Let's just call it brief roundup of some interesting information from the past week. So usually we will dive into a news story. Eric will provide a business tip. Eric Simpson, in case you don't know, is a managed services consultant. He works with MSPs, helps them improve their business. So he'll provide a business tip. We'll have fun, typically at the end of an episode, 5 to 10 minutes on video. It's up on the channelpronetwork.com website, typically Monday mornings. Worth watching.
It is. And, Rich, you've been doing that for a while. How many episodes have you guys done?
We started that. It was either January or February of this year, so we've done a bunch.
Yeah, I think you guys are a little bit more regular in the weekly aspect of that than we are here on Channelpro Weekly. But we only say here on Channelpro Weekly that we will do a show that comes out in a week of the year. So this is the week of the 10th. So this is a weekly. It's a week where we're better about getting them done, and we're really excited that we're going to have a video format here where we can hopefully get some live Q&A. So why don't we break down what we're going to do this particular episode?
So as we do on every episode, we'll start out, we'll take a look at some stories from the news. Actually, stories from last week in the news. We've been sort of waiting to do episode 100 today when I'm here in Colorado Grove with Matt. Ordinarily, by the way, we'll be in different places. I'll be at home in Seattle. I'll be in a hotel room somewhere out on the road. But for episode 100, which is kind of special, I thought it was worth the trip out here to do this for you together. So we'll dive into the news a little bit. We'll probably take a break at that point, and then we'll take a look back at the past 100 episodes. Maybe for the benefit of regular listeners, Matt's museum, his tech museum, is right here in this home we're in right now. You've seen pictures of contents of the museum. You've heard descriptions of the museum. You're actually going to pay a visit to the museum today. I got my first visit to the museum in the flesh yesterday, but you will join us visit to the museum in the Whitlock household a little bit later in this episode.
It's fair to say, Rich got to tour the 3 different sections of the museum: the museum case, graveyard, and my disaster zone of my office. We will visit the museum case today. I do not think we're going to venture into the graveyard because that is taking our lives into our own hands, going down there again. It's pretty messy. But so I think we're excited that we're doing episode 100 here. We got to be careful we don't set the precedent that we're going to be together every show especially filming in front of a window, which I know is a bad faux pas, but there's like nowhere else in the house to do this. Normally, we'll be in different webcams, we'll bounce back and forth. This is kind of fun, special way. Rich and I got to spend some time. He's going to be, for those who've been listening a long time, we know that we talk about many things on the show, including the goats.
Yeah.
Which will hopefully get the chance to visit the goats on Saturday before we do some fun stuff. So, are you excited to meet the goats?
I am very excited to meet the goats. In fact, it's just a rumor that I'm here for the podcast. It's mostly the goats.
It's Rich comes for the podcast, stays for the goats. And also, this came before we get into the news. This also came up last night when we were having dinner. I have been wrong about something for so long that I was almost embarrassed to learn this last night.
I was embarrassed actually because this is going to sound to regular listeners like we just sort of exposed the greatest punking of all time. And I promise you, I was not trying to punk my co-host. So what the heck? This is episode 100. We'll get in the Wayback Machine. And remember an episode early in the run of this podcast where for some reason or other, and this is classic us, we were late in the episode and the question of pets came up. And so Matt, who has what kind of pet? And we were co-hosting with Cecilia Galvin, our buddy back then. We'll talk about her again later in the show. She had dogs. She was talking about the dogs. Matt has a cat, Mr. Kitty. He was talking about the cat. I spend about 50% of my time out in the road. I mean, I don't have a pet. It's kind of crazy for me to do that. So I'm thinking on the fly, like, what's the craziest thing I can say that might get a laugh out of my two co-hosts? I said, I got iguanas. I've got a couple of iguanas.
Two. And he had this great story about the iguanas. And he said it so seriously and so matter-of-factly. And the things that he said about like how he takes care of the iguanas and where they live and what they eat and what they do, which is lay around, which is what iguanas do. I totally believed him. So like for the last year and a half or so, I've been like, how's the iguanas? Like, how are the iguanas doing? And we kind of joke about it here on the show that he has, about his iguanas, just like I kind of joke around about Mr. Kitty. So the iguanas aren't real. They're a figment of his imagination.
I didn't tell you this last night, but I distinctly remember the first moment where it occurred to me, does he know this is a joke? Because it was like late in the evening, and for some reason or other, not that this is like a habit, but we were IMing each other, and you asked something about the iguanas that could have been in on the joke or not. And I was thinking, I wonder if he thinks, and it just became very obvious last night. No, he thinks they're real. And I figured, before I fool his kids into believing there are iguanas in Seattle, I should probably just clarify this.
My entire world has changed. It's you destroyed the dream that you had iguanas. But little do you know, Rich, I have a surprise for you.
Yeah.
But we won't see it today. But you'll have a surprise before you leave.
Oh,
okay? That is a promise. And you'll be able to talk about it and show it off on the next video podcast.
All right.
So, more about that next time. So we're going to spend a little bit of time later in the show talking about the person we started the podcast with, and we'll talk a little bit about how they got started for those who may be new and have never watched live or listened to any of our shows before, or discovering us for the first time, and go into some of the other regular stuff. So, Rich, why don't we go ahead and dive into the news?
All right.
So, some of this, we're into that
period of the year where news slows down a little bit. So this particular week, as we're recording this live, hasn't been a whole ton of news that we want to dive into. But there was a reasonably big story last week, because we didn't record an episode last week. Here's our opportunity to talk about an acquisition from Connectwise. And it's kind of an interesting one. It's very emblematic of their approach to security. Which obviously is a red-hot market in general. It's a field of competition right now for companies like Connectwise that sell line of business software for MSPs. Now, at the IT Nation Connect show, their big partner show in November, Connectwise launched this big cybersecurity initiative, basically, that they're doing. And there were a number of different components to it. One of the things that they announced, though, was that they were introducing these security tools that their partners can use. And one of those tools was a sort of combination risk assessment vulnerability scanning tool that they had created in partnership with a company called Sienna Group, LLC. A neighbor of theirs in Tampa, kind of a cybersecurity consulting and education company. And so what Connectwise announced last week is that they have acquired Sienna. Sienna is now part of Connectwise. They have rebranded it the Connectwise Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. And basically, it is going to be the Connectwise in-house user or partner education arm for security. So there are a number of different prongs to the Connectwise strategy for security. They are going to be introducing sort of a hub, a tool that is going to allow MSPs to manage all of the different third-party security solutions that they use with their customers, firewall, antivirus, DNS, whatever kind of third-party security tools you're relying on. They're going to try to centralize the management of all those tools through this hub. They're creating what they call an integration language that's going to make that possible. They're going to be talking to all these vendors, getting them to plug into this hub. But they also feel very passionately that, and there are statistics to back them up, there's an enormous gap in the market right now in terms of the need for cybersecurity skills and the supply, the demand and supply of cybersecurity talent. And so this acquisition of Sienna is basically Connectwise putting its money where its mouth is. They for an undisclosed sum, have purchased an organization that is going to be 100% focused on turning ordinary everyday MSPs into MSPs that have cybersecurity capabilities. And this is going to be a good thing. Connectwise would tell you for the marketplace in terms of being able to satisfy the demand among SMBs for cybersecurity assistance. And it's also going to be a good thing they would contend to you for MSPs because you can bill more. You are worth more to your clients, therefore you can charge them more if you have cybersecurity skills. And they're going to be looking for everyone they partner with to get those skills through the Connectwise Cybersecurity Center of Excellence.
So what? So they're doing training and education. What kind of other training and educational efforts are going to be putting forward with this? So they knew that they weren't doing before, or
yes, yeah. So and the basic answer to that question is every kind that matters. So what they did is they took the NIST cybersecurity framework, which is pretty widely recognized, embraced framework for the different components of a complete strategy for cybersecurity. And they're going to be doing courses across all 5 of those NIST domains, essentially. They did one last week. In fact, I think it was the day after the acquisition was announced that was specifically about risk assessment and vulnerability scanning and kind of tied into this tool that they had done. But that was sort of representative of the kind of thing that they'll be doing. And it's representative in a number of ways, actually. I don't think rolling out more tools is necessarily a high priority on the list for the Center of Excellence, but they will be doing some more of that. And when they do, they will not only roll out the tool, but roll out some courses to help you, use the tool with your clients.
Okay. What is there going to be like fees to this, or is this all gratis? So you can sign up for?
Pretty much. I mean, the way that they always do anything partner education oriented at Connectwise is, where they need to, they'll raise as much money as they do to break even, essentially, but it's not a profit center.
Okay.
So I would imagine there will be some kind of fee associated with this education, but nothing that would be enough to keep people away, essentially.
Okay. And then do you have a link on the story where they can learn more about this?
I don't believe so. I don't know that link existed when the story broke, actually.
Okay. So, but I'm sure we'll be following this, and if you went ahead to channelpro.com, we'll keep you informed every week when we're on.
I'm sure if you went to connectwise.com and looked up education.
We don't want to go there, Rich. We want them to go to our website. No. I went to the Connectwise website and learn more about that. Anything else you want to talk about, or do you have any other news that was important?
Nope, I don't think so. Like I said, this fits into a larger cybersecurity strategy. It's an interesting contrast. It's interesting to me in general if you compare Connectwise to Kaseya. Kaseya is far from their only competitor, but a major competitor, and they've been doing a lot of acquisitions lately as well. 2018 was a big year for acquisitions at Kaseya. They did Unitrends, the BDR vendor, Rapid Fire Tools, spanning for cloud-to-cloud backup. So really what they're looking to do is acquire companies that make security solutions, weave those solutions into their RMM and PSS systems, and create this kind of all-encompassing platform that, in addition to everything else that you need for your customers, has a complete security tool set for you. And that's really not what Connectwise is doing. It's really never been their approach to security or any other market they're in. They don't want to compete with the Webleaks and the Symantec's of the world. They want to be the hub, the central point of access for all the solutions, and give you the ability to combine whatever different set of solutions that you want. So when they do acquisitions, it tends to be something like HTG. In January, they acquired HTG for partner education, and then more recently, Sienna Group, again, partner education. So their acquisitions tend to be more in the zone of partner enablement.
Okay. And speaking of being enabled, WatchGuard has enabled some new firewalls and their OS with SD-WAN support.
And for those of you who are regular listeners to the podcast and regular visitors to the channelpronetwork.com website, this theme will sound relatively familiar to you, because this is not the first time that a firewall manufacturer in 2018, or even really just in the last 2-3 months, has announced that they're building SD-WAN capabilities into some of their firewall products. Zyxel did that in October, I believe it was. Just a few weeks ago, Connectwise did the exact same thing. So we're seeing a trend here, basically, where the leading names in firewalls are building capabilities into the operating system that powers their devices, that allows those devices to deliver software-defined wide area networking services. And the idea is that through various kinds of traffic optimization technologies that they have, they're going to enable you to not only combine SD-WAN with the same device that you're already using for firewall purposes, for security purposes, and so fewer devices to manage, to install, etc. One box basically that's doing a number of different things. They're not only doing that for you, but they're doing it in a way, all these companies contend, that you can control all the traffic without having to invest in some sort of specialized connectivity like an MPLS line. So you can do it inexpensively. And one of the things WatchGuard really likes to emphasize is that they've been working for a number of years now on their zero-touch provisioning functionality for their firewalls, which basically allows you to drop ship a firewall out to a remote office, a branch office, where there's no IT on site. You don't even necessarily have somebody nearby. Without a truck roll, without assistance from anyone who knows what they're doing, you can basically enable the end user to plug the device into power, plug the
No, but they have to touch it. Yeah. You said it was zero touch.
Yeah, it's who's touch. Zero by somebody.
But they can't zero touch it. They have to touch it, and then
You're right.
They lie. Liars.
Zero-ish touch provision.
Yeah, that's what they need to start putting, like little zero-ish or minor. No, you don't want to say minor touch because then somebody can get that wrong. You need to say, what would be another word for low? Low touch? You want to touch low. This is a filthy product. What are they doing with this product?
Yeah. Touch. I was going to say touch one, but that would be a whole other issue.
Touch one what?
Yeah, right. Moving on, folks. But the idea basically is you don't have to send somebody out to the customer site. They plug it into the internet, they plug it into power, and everything else has been sort of pre-configured for them on your end. It's just all going. So that's actually a very easy way to get a remote site up and running on both security and wide area connectivity.
So what other this is just an update, right? So they don't have to pay for this. It's just something that's going to get rolled out into their existing products, or is this only in new products available?
It is in the new release, the 12.3 release of their Fire OS operating system. So I mean, as long as you're on maintenance and eligible to download the new version of that, it's going to come with 12.3. And then going forward, if you obviously order WatchGuard firewalls, will come with it.
Okay. Awesome. That seems pretty straightforward. Yeah. Do you use the firewalls at your? I know you're a very big security guy, and you have your apartment locked down with various IoT sensors and
exactly.
And, you have this firewall installed.
Yeah, in the security closet in my home, where I have about 15 firewalls running at any given time. 2 or 3 of them are from WatchGuard, and yes, those are running the Fire OS.
Good. And do you have them because you are worried about security, because you actually think that the firewall will prevent fire from spreading from your kitchen into other areas?
No, just the opposite. The warming effect this time of year is very nice.
You use this as like your personal.
It's almost like a fireplace.
It's like Fireplace OS.
Yeah.
Well, that's in the 12.5.
Yeah, they're working on
That's
that.
thermostats and humidity control will be on the next model series. All right. Anything else you want to say about that?
Nothing that we need to dive into. There were actually some other updates in that 12.3 release of Fire OS. So those of you who are WatchGuard users would want to check that out. There's some new IPv6 support and stuff like that. So more to it just than the SD1. But it's just, it's a very interesting trend. And I think it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out in the market, essentially. I mean, obviously, there are a ton of companies out there that specialize in SD1. That's sort of their primary offering. They're now competing with the WatchGuard Sonic Walls of the world, essentially. And then there are a ton of people who make money selling MPLS lines, to SMBs and others. And so to the extent that this kind of approach that Zyxel and Sonic Wall and now WatchGuard are taking to SD1 catches on, SMB space generally, lower end of wherever it potentially catches on. It'll just be interesting to see what the market impact of this is, because I think it's pretty clear to say, 6 months, 12 months from now, anyone who's anyone in firewalls will be doing some variation of this. We'll see if that is what the market wants.
So if they're anyone who's anyone, if they're not anyone, then can it be anyone who's anyone that does anyone, or is there any one thing?
Yeah.
Good. We'll stop there. Yeah. Yes. The answer, folks, is yes. All right. So speaking of yes, you want to, when you say yes, you want to identify with positive waves. This is a segue that has already gone wrong. I'm not used to doing segues on camera. I can use they're terrible even during the regular show anyway. Proofpoint has some people. Wait. Did I mean they're going to attack people?
No, they're not. What they're going to do
is targeting you, and they're going to attack you. That's what it says. No, people-centric attack index.
Yeah.
So they're going to attack indexes. What's wrong with indexes? They're part of books, Rich. They don't do anything wrong. They help you find information.
Allow me to put your mind at ease. This is not anything nearly that nefarious. It's actually kind of an interesting new feature that Proofpoint has added to their targeted attack protection platform. Now, all of us, we all aspire in one way or another to be a VIP, a very important person. But the reality is some of us are VAPs, very attacked people. This is, a part of the message here. I mean, and it's true in any organization, even a small organization. Cyber criminals, hackers, they're not going after everybody equally. They are more interested in the people who know the bank account numbers, say, or the CEO, or other people in a position of power with access to money, social security numbers, etc. Or other people who have terrible, security habits. So essentially what Proofpoint has done is equip this security product vendors who keep an eye on that kind of thing and basically allow you to identify who are the most targeted individuals within a company and what kinds of ways are being targeted, so that you can be much more targeted yourself in terms of where you're directing security end user awareness training, what kinds of additional protections that you need to add to the environment, instead of just kind of assuming everybody is an equally bad risk factor or threat vector within the organization. You identify the VAPs and you overinvest basically in mitigating that risk.
So are they just putting more thought into this other than, okay, who is the VAP? It's just the people with higher titles. Those would obviously be more valuable. But is there more to it than just like rank in an organization? How do they?
This is more about looking at incoming and outgoing activity. So it's not a question of just looking at somebody's title and saying you might want to keep an. They're actually looking at what's happening in the security platform, what's happening on your network. Where are the phishing attacks going to? Who are the people who are maybe clicking the wrong links and so on. So it's more objective than that, basically, in terms of who the VAPs are.
So it's like a habit in place throughout the score based on what you do.
Right.
So okay, so they're browsing bad things or infected with something, then those are the ones that kind of pop up. And this monitor.
Yeah, exactly.
And then how does it notify?
I don't know very much about how the reporting works, but I mean, essentially, everybody gets assigned a score of some kind. You can run a report to see who your top 10 VAPs are and take action from there.
So if they're in the report as a VAP, that's when we go and you attack them, right? Physically.
Except it's got to be zero touch.
Well, how does that work?
We're back to that, and it just doesn't work, does it?
So this isn't to like say you're. It's not saying there's anything wrong with the employee per se. It's just that attacks tend to go to them, so you're putting in an extra.
Exactly.
Those measures that you're putting on to that employee isn't necessarily you're going to stuff them in a closet. It's just that you're going to add extra security software or something like that to them.
And probably training is going to play a big part of it too. But you want to understand who within the organization pose the greatest risk because they get attacked the most often, and are maybe most susceptible to those attacks.
Super fun. And this is this part of a suite? Or is this a new product that you can subscribe to?
It's a new feature that they're adding to Proofpoint Targeted Attack Protection, which is a product from Proofpoint.
And it's a new feature. Is there extra cost for this feature, or is it just being added in?
I believe it's just being added in. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I believe that's correct.
Cool. Oh, yeah. So that we want to check out. And do we have more information on this?
We do not, but again, you can go to the Proofpoint site, and I'm sure they'll have all sorts of information for you.
Just driving away, Rich, one after another. There's a little bit more into the story if you want a little more detail. So, for those who are watching live, I will start dropping links to the live chat. I didn't think we could do that. So, in the future, I will start putting links into the live chat on the stream, so you can go to the story and follow along. And of course, every week when we put the show out, there's a big show notes page. It's going to be like a new branding page. I started working on that, where people can go and they can do a couple things. One, you'll be able to find all the show notes pages a little bit easier, rather than just kind of scroll to the download section. Two, you'll also be able to see when we're going to be doing the next live broadcast. Because one of the things that we want to commit to is we try to have like a regular recording, which is Thursday Central. Thursday at 2 p.m. Central. Because Rich is on the road a lot, we may not always be able to make that particular time. So we're going to always shoot for that. He's out and can't do that particular time. We'll move it in the week. We'll try to post on that page and on the homepage when the next episode is going to be airing. And you can also, of course, watch the social networks. We're Channelpro Network on Facebook. We're at Channelpro on Twitter. And just like we did today, we'll throw we'll throw a note out there when we're about to broadcast live with the showtime. But we'll try to communicate that ahead of time as much as possible.
Yeah.
As best we can. So I will add those links here to chat. I don't know if we have anybody who's posted anything yet, because this is kind of like a secret episode. So there's probably not going to be a lot of people who join us here. But if you are watching live, we definitely want to include you in the show. One of the big things that we've always wanted, and we've tried to, but it really hasn't worked very well. Is we've always wanted to have our listeners and our viewers more involved in the show, like more Q&A, having their comments be a part of the episode. If you know something about a product we're talking about, or a new story that we're talking about, or any of the media topics, we want to be able to include those into the show. So this format, hopefully will allow you to do that. So if you go and you watch live, please take part in the live chat. Post your questions or make your comments, and we'll keep an eye on it here and try to get you involved, because we want to put a lot of time in. And if you're joining late, and I'll mention this a couple times, we're going to make some time in the show for Q&A if anybody has questions. But we didn't promote this particular episode on purpose because it's new. We haven't done it before. We figured there might be kinks and struggles. So this will be an episode most will enjoy after and not live, because we were just expecting the worst disaster. But we know this is kind of new for us, and but we're gonna learn new tricks as we go along, and listen for your feedback on things that we're doing wrong. Again, where we're sitting, this isn't going to be where we're doing every week. Normally, we'll be on separate cams, going back and forth as we discuss things. We're going to be bringing in live video guests. We do not have one this week, right? We don't have any guests this week.
For this week, no. But next week, actually, we will have. So just for folks who are listening now, if they're listening before next week's episode goes out live, that will be December 20th at our standard recording time, 2 p.m. Central. Thursday the 20th, we will be joined by our guest host, Herman Poole, of Vertical Action, a MSP marketing expert, just a great guy, and we will be happy to have him co-host with us. And then we will also be joined at least for a segment, maybe more than that, by Michael Fraser, who is the CEO of a company called Refactor, and we spoke a little bit about that solution a few episodes ago on the show, and he'll tell everybody about it on the show next week. The interesting thing that has happened in his world since that product debuted, and we talked about it in the podcast, and now is that he entered a competition that Connectwise was running in conjunction with the IT Nation event, where they were basically running a kind of Shark Tank for startups. And he won, and the prize money that goes along with that is $100,000. He won $100K from Connectwise for this Refactor solution, which he's going to be putting into that platform. Obviously, it's kind of a cool thing. So he'll be on the show next week on video. I don't think he knows that yet, but he will be on video next week to tell us about it. And who knows, maybe we can even figure out a way to do a demo.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've been kind of over a couple times as we've been talking to some of the news stories, so we should be able, if it's on the screen, we should be able to cut over to that. So that'll be kind of fun. Cool. Well, so just in case we have some questions that we have into the audio side of the podcast, we will address that. You are subscribed to the Channelpro Weekly audio show, as we've been doing since episode 1 back in the day. That nothing there will change. We will continue to grab the audio from these live feeds, and we'll cut it up, edit it, we'll put it out. So if you prefer the audio format, you subscribed, all of that will continue to work as it has been. No changes. I'm a big fan of. I listen to podcasts much more than I watch them, so I understand that for those of you who are very keen on the audio side only, all good there, no changes. And we'll still go forward here as best we can, making it friendly to our listeners. So if we're showing something on the screen or talking about something where we're like holding it up or whatever, we will We will describe in detail what we're doing, so those who are listening do not get left behind.
Indeed.
Very important. We are also going to take scheduled breaks. So we are going to take a short break. We got lots more ahead. These breaks will not, if you're watching live, the breaks will not be long. It'll just be like a minute or two. So let's see what's coming up here later in the show. We're going to take some time for some audience Q&A. We don't have any big stories, do we? Any other like meaty stories to talk about?
I could go take a peek at that and see if there's something else we can work in here at the last minute. But I was sort of figuring episode 100, we'll do episode 100 kind of stuff.
This is kind of more for fun. And actually, you know, I do have a museum pick. I don't know if I've done. I think I've done this yet. Right. So it'll go along with my tech pick.
All right. Perfect.
So we'll do the trip to my museum in the next segment.
Great.
Before we move on to the regular end of the show, kind of things that we do. And I'm excited, Rich, because we're going to be able to do all kinds of new stuff.
Yep.
And this will be fun. We have some ideas. We will brainstorm, Rich and I. And we'll talk about some of those things. They're just secret. We'll just keep it secret. And we'll introduce them as we do them. Who knows? Anyway, we are going to take a short break. We're going to go to the museum. We'll have Q&A if there's any questions. We're also going to take a look back and listen to a small segment of episode one as we commemorate here on episode 100. Talk about a very important part of showing how we started, and we miss greatly if you remember the early shows. If you don't, then you learn a little bit about her and why we do this and why we talk about her. So stick around. We will be right back.
So disconnect and head on up.
Yeah. Do you want to just go ahead and go up, or do you want to introduce here and then? Cut to you.
Okay.
So you can head up, and then I'll cut to your camera, and then I'll join you upstairs.
Oh, okay.
But we'll still be sitting here. We'll still sit here while we get started.
Okay.
So and then you can go up. Right. Yes. That's how that should work. I did mute the mic, so.
And then.
No, I'll come up with it.
Switch over to me, or.
Yeah. I'm still kind of hearing our sound. Why am I still hearing our sound? Shouldn't be. Shouldn't. Hello? It's weird. Getting picked up to yours.
Okay.
That's why. But people are listening. All right, we're back with part 2 of Channel Pro Weekly. Where we normally dive into some of the more meatier topics, stories on the site, but today, since it's episode 100 live, and as you just noticed, if you were watching, you got a little behind-the-scenes taste because I forgot Rich's microphone was on, so you were hearing, well, everything, everything we were talking about, you were hearing as we were planning on how we were going to pull this off. So I hope you enjoyed that little backstage look. So I think first, you want to do the museum first?
Sure.
All right, so Rich is going to dive up, and I'm going to join him here in just a second, but I'm going to cut to him. So Rich is going to head on upstairs. So for those who don't know, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, but for those who don't know, I have been a technology collector for a very, very long time. I've got bins and bins of parts, components, CE devices, video game consoles, desktops upon desktops, software, you name it. I have a disease, as my wife would call it, that prevents me from throwing away anything electronic. And this came out a long time ago. We've actually had the museum pick now since I think episode 6 or 7 of Channelpro Weekly. And it's kind of become, when we talk to people who listen to the show regularly, they always say they really enjoy the kind of trip down memory lane that we take and talking about these old things. And one of the questions I'm often asked is, do you really own all this stuff? And the true answer is yes. So far, everything that we've talked about here in the museum is, other than a couple guests who've had some things, is all things that I physically have in my possession. And one of my rules for the museum is that it works. I don't have many things that don't actually function. So I can fire something up and turn it on and see how technology evolves. So Rich is stationed outside one part of my museum, which is the museum case that holds a lot of the small electronics. So I'm going to cut over to him and let him talk with you while I go upstairs and join him. Rich is on the scene. Rich, are you there?
I am. I don't know if you're seeing me down there, but here I am, standing in front of Matt's Tech Museum.
All right. Hello, I'm on locale with Mr. Freeman. So I'm going to open up the doors here to the Tech Museum. And this is one part of the museum. So this is where I keep certain things that, well, fit nicely on a display case. So I have a wide variety of mobile phones and devices. Many of these that we've talked about over the course of, oh wait, you know what? Did I switch to you? Yes, I switched to you. I'm sorry. I'm just making sure. A lot of these we talked about over the years that I've brought out. So one of the ones recently we talked about was this little guy here, the Sansa Clip. We talked about in one of the previous episodes. The Sony Ericsson S710A. We talked about this one. One of the very first phones I busted out was ye old brick phone. So everybody remember talking like this? Hello, how's it going?
Oh, very portable.
Yes, very portable. And this actually still functions. It doesn't have a working battery, it like exploded, but I still have the car cord, and if I plug it in, it turns on. But this is so old, it relies on analog networks, and there are no more analog networks in existence in the United States. So it can't really connect to anything, but it does turn on and it works. I've got another classic that we had here. This is the StarTAC that we have. I've got another phone we talked about on the show, the original, very first Android device that ever shipped in the United States. This is the T-Mobile G1. And we talked about it a little bit on the show, but one of the interesting things about Android is that even though it's really great now, it does all kinds of stuff. The first version of Android was pretty terrible. In fact, this particular device, it had this side thing with a keyboard, because the first version of Android that shipped did not have an on-screen keyboard at all. So if you needed to input text, this was the only way to do it. It also had that little weird rolly nub. It was kind of like a mouse, like a trackball on a phone. See?
It was also an infamously insecure platform.
Yes.
First version of Android.
Not secure at all. So here I got a bunch of phones and stuff on display. Up here we kind of dive into some more of the more interesting random pieces. This is the little phone dialer thing that we talked about,
right,
that I used a long time ago. Still in the box. I've got kind of the classic Game Boy collection over here. So we got the original Game Boy. Still works. Still have all my games. Still can play Tetris. And for those, I was telling Rich some of the stories about this stuff yesterday when I gave him the tour. I got this as a Christmas present from my wonderful parents. I love them both. In 1989, I believe. 89 or 90. It may have been out already a year. It was somewhere in that neck of the woods. I was 9 or 10 years old, I believe. Still works. Still have it to this day. In fact, so many of the wonderful things my parents bought me back in the day, I still own and can still use and enjoy. So a little fun tip there. There's some stuff in here that I haven't talked about on the show that I'm saving for future things. So as you kind of peek around here, you might see a few things that will pop up in later episodes. I've also got sticking with the gaming aspect. I have the Sega Game Gear, the color handheld. I've got some other wacky stuff. Did I talk about this?
I don't think so.
Ooh, I'll save that for another show. That's kind of a fun one. I've got the Game Boy Advance. I've got some things like there. I've got, let's see, up here, I also have the very first thing we talked about, the very first museum pick, which is the iOmega zip drive. I'm sure many of you have memories of this particular device because it was wonderful that you could store more than 1.44 megabytes of data in a disk that wasn't a whole lot bigger than a floppy. This is the first one. This is the non-USB parallel version. That you kind of like hooked it between your printer, because that was pretty much the only thing that used parallel in most situations. There's some other stuff that used parallel, but yeah, it was slow as molasses, but it worked, and you had a lot more data to do. And of course, I still have the a wide variety of zip disks. Anybody want to see what a zip disk kind of looked like? There we go. So put it by Rich's head so you can kind of gauge its size. So we got that, and then I believe one of these is, this is the driver disk and software that you needed to install it. Yeah, here's the software, because you had to install the software to get all that on there. The tools. I've got some other things up here that we've discussed. I haven't talked about any of my Prontos yet, and we'll save those for another day. Yeah, some of the stuff is CE kind of devices, so I know it's not completely related to PCs, but it's still fun to talk about and fun to go through and reminisce and learn about things that you guys might have. And of course, one thing that we could do, Rich, is down the road we could have a listener viewer museum pick, because I will eventually run out of stuff to talk about. I have a lot of crap, and Rich saw the graveyard, and he knows that down in the graveyard there's boxes back there that I haven't gotten to. I don't even know what's in them. But I will someday run out of stuff to talk about. So we could have you guys find one of your devices that you might have laying around, or that was meaningful to you in some way back in the day, and you can take a picture of it, or join us on the show and share it and talk about it. That could be a fun thing. What do you guys think about that?
I love that idea.
I like that idea too. So if you like that idea, put it in the comment section. And it's something that we'll certainly work on the show, and go ahead and start throwing out ideas of things that you have that you might want to come on and talk about, and we will work on getting you on to discuss those things. Can't wait. Love to see the old stuff that people have laying around. So up here I have a few other things we've talked about. Some of that stuff I'll save. Down here is land of PDAs. I've got various. I was a big fan of like Pocket organization, Pocket PC kind of stuff. So I have various Palm units. Some I've talked about, some I haven't. We've talked about this, which is that Sharp organizer. Here's that portable scanner, document scanner that I had. A couple of things we haven't talked about. We did talk about the caller ID units, like the first caller ID model. I have an Xbox. I have some other gaming stuff. This shelf here is I had to give one shelf to my wife. So as part of the museum, I also have a large collection of cows. I don't know what they have to do with museum or tech, but there they are.
Makes perfect sense.
Makes perfect sense. When she asks for a shelf, you give her a shelf. And then below that, I've got some joysticks and some PC input gaming peripherals that I haven't talked about yet. I did talk about the joypad. I don't know if I talked about the Wingman. We'll do that one someday. I also have another fun one, which I'll bring out. This is the HD DVD add-on for the Xbox 360. That's a fun one that we'll talk about someday. Panasonic 3DO and a couple things like that. So this is just one part of the museum. The office has a whole lot more stuff, but normally when I shoot in there, I shoot. My other bookcase has a lot of like older gaming stuff and some other thing out there. You'll see that in the background. You'll also show you some other parts of the museum and the office and my bins and bins of stuff another day. But but you'd enjoy getting a little bit of an insight on some of the cool collectibles that I've collected over the years. And Rich can attest that there's a lot more. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
And I think people need to get the complete effect. This is actually a lit case.
It is a lit case. If the lighting, where's the switch for the lighting? It is a lit case. I don't know if the lighting works though. lighting is not working.
Non-functional, but that's.
I think what happened. There's a plug back here that connects to like an RF switch, and I think it fell out at one point, and I have to actually like move the entire case to get back there and plug it back in. So, but it does light up normally, and it looks very pretty. But yeah, lots of people love to come and check this stuff out, and see that. Also, I'm going to point out two more pieces that I have right over here. Kind of a mess. My apologies. One, this is a limited edition 200 millionth anniversary HP laser printer that I won as a giveaway at the HP Print Day event. I think you probably remember talking about that.
Oh, yeah.
They had a contest. They only made 300 of these with this like special medallion. This is number 30 of 300. Throughout the event that they were having, the person that you could tweet and do social media stuff, and every tweet or social media thing you did gave you a chance to win one of these, and I ultimately ended up winning one. So that's kind of a fun one. And of course, down here, this is not an old thing, but this is one of the things that I've been talking a lot about recently, which is my Epson EcoTank. This is the ET3700. I've been loving this thing. We talked about it a lot. We talked a lot about how this particular device is affecting, the EcoTank is affecting the color print market and that kind of thing. So there it is there. And I think that's it. So I'm going to run back downstairs, switch over, and Rich, the wonderful cameraman, will.
Oh, thank you.
Will join us. Oh, and of course, Rex the dog is up there. Always got to see Rex. Rex the dog. Long story about that one. Maybe one day I'll bring out some of the robotics and we'll talk about robotics. So,
okay.
All right, I'm going to run back downstairs and switch over.
And I'll just fill some time until that happens here. Yeah. Yeah, you can't see it right now, but I'm tap dancing. I'm actually pretty good at it, and that's why the camera's shaking a little bit. But you'll just have to trust me. I'm doing a little soft shoe for you right now.
All right, so are we ready to cut back to the studio?
All right,
we'll cut back to the studio. Okay, we're back. We're back in the studio, which is also called downstairs. But I hope you enjoyed getting a look at some of the stuff that I've collected. And as soon as Rich makes his travels back to the lower floor, he can tell you that he's seen a lot. So Rich, of all the things that you've seen, gadget-wise, tech-wise, what was some of the more interesting things that you saw while you were here on tour?
Oh gosh, let's see. That's a good question. I always love old phones, but it's the old stuff. It's some of the stuff that we talked about on the show before, that like the caller ID, the stuff that you just can't find anymore. Or we were talking yesterday about another item that was on the podcast, the Gaming Boy virtual reality.
Yeah, the Virtual Boy.
Yeah.
I do have one of those.
A collector's item.
Yeah, not many of those floating around these days. So that's a fun one. Rich got to see the graveyard, and the graveyard has a bunch of old desktops in there, and boxes that I haven't opened in 10 years. And I've been trying to root around down there a little bit. And as we go through that, my wife and I have been trying to start organizing and sorting as we went to finish our basement downstairs. To make a usable space, and so everything is just pulled out and strewn all over the places. We're going through everything, so kind of a mess. You'll see some more interesting stuff from the graveyard. Rich also attest that I have a stack of desktops in my upstairs hallway that is being recycled.
And actually, that was interesting to me, because I remember mentioning to you yesterday that one of those desktops up there is a Sony Vaio, and I didn't even know they made desktops.
They sure did, and they probably still do. And I was telling you, I didn't get a chance to look it up, but if they don't in the US, I'm sure they still do in other parts of the world, because the Sony Vaio is a big brand. They certainly still make a lot of laptops and other things like that. So, and phones. They still make a lot of phones. So that's kind of fun. So what's next on our itinerary here, Mr. Rich? Let's see. Audience Q&A. I didn't have any questions. So Rich, I will give one opportunity This will be the Q&A.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to give you the opportunity to ask any question you want. And I may or may not answer it. But I'm going to let you ask it.
Any question I want.
Any question. The question about
so is Mr. Kitty the original name, the assigned name of your cat?
Yes, that is.
You settled, this is what we're going to call this cat.
Yes, it's a long story. I'll admit here's the short version. So he is named Mr. Kitty because originally he was not ours originally. We found him in our backyard. He was cowering under a wood rack that I had back there while we were building the shed. And we noticed, and he was very small, which is hard to believe Mr. Kitty is small. Like, oh, go grab him. I'll throw him on camera here in a minute. And he was malnourished. He was clearly, I believe he belonged to somebody. He looked like he really did belong to somebody. So we brought him in and we tried to find his owners. So we put up sign, doing the nice thing, doing God's work for a creature of this planet, my good deed for the year, because I only do one. And we put up posters at the grocery store. And in the meantime, I had to take him up to the vet and get him checked out, make sure he was safe to have around the kids, because my son had also just been born like a month or two before we found him. So I had to be careful that this could be like a feral cat who's going to claw his eyeballs out. So he started in the garage and we were looking for the owners, and it wasn't the one who posted a sign. And we got him a litter box, and we had to get him a couple toys and food and take him to the vet and get him checked out and make sure he was okay. And in the meantime, he moved from the garage. We had him shoved in the basement for a while. And then over the course of a week or two, we started bringing him upstairs, and we noticed he was really great with the kids. He started interacting. And then eventually, like 2 months later, and we didn't name him because we just assumed he had a name already. So we would call him the Kitty, because he was a lot smaller back then. The Kitty, or Mr. Kitty. And by the time we ultimately realized that he had been staked outside, stalking the house, gathering data, and determined, yep, this house is full of suckers and they will take me in. We ultimately had to decide what we were going to do with him. And by then, the kids had already loved him. He's super cool, super gentle, super nice. And he became our cat. But the reason why he still called Mr. Kitty is because we'd been calling him that for so long. No other name made sense. So we kind of just kept it as like the homage of his roots, where he came. But it also lets us call him whatever we want at any given moment. So we call him Furball, Fluffy Face, Rodent, House Rat, all of those loving names as well.
And compared to any of those, Mr. Kitty actually is pretty good. So
he is pretty good. So if you want to, I'll put the camera on you for a second. I will go hunt him down, and then we will show him off here.
And because we're going to have Mr. Kitty on camera, he will be in scale. This is a rather large cat. This is actually the first time yesterday was the first time I had ever seen him myself. And I can finally confirm this is a large cat.
There we go, Mr. Kitty. There we go. Here he is, right here in the flesh, Mr. Cat, Mr. Kitty. Mr. Kitty, you gotta look right over there. Look over there. There he is.
There's your camera.
As you can see, he's pretty big. Gotta get him a little closer here. So, yep, here's the office dweller that often lays on my lap while I work and makes meowing sounds. And he was even nice enough during the recording of one episode to hack up a hairball in the hallway, so he could be a part of the show. So here he is, Mr. Cat.
How you doing?
And he's, yes, very hairy. I suck up about a cat's worth of hair in the vacuum cleaner every single week. That's what he does. He lays, he eats, and he grows hair.
He's good at all of them.
That's his job. That is his job. So I'm going to stand up here and throw him back on the couch where he'll be happy again. Oh, okay, well, I guess now he wants to watch us do the show. So Now he's watching us record the show. All right, so you all got to meet Mr. Kitty. I would say someday, we can meet Rich's iguanas, but they're a figment of my imagination. So no iguanas for us here at Channelpro Weekly.
I may have to go make this real now.
Don't buy an iguana just to satisfy me. All right. We're going to close out part 2 here with a little bit of discussion and conversation about how this started. And if you have questions for us, if you happen to be watching live, I can flip over here to the chat. But if you're watching live and you want to ask some questions, feel free. But Channelpro Weekly has a very storied history that started actually many years before we even did the first episode. It was kind of something we had talked about. And how did that come about, Rich? I'll let you tell the story.
Well, honestly, I don't remember the very earliest conversations. Just that the idea came up. Gosh darn it! Why doesn't Channelpro have a podcast? And some of the thinking behind it basically was that it would not be theoretically all that difficult for us to do because Matt and myself and our colleague, who will speak more of, Cecilia Galvin, who's the executive editor of Channelpro originally and up until recently, we're talking to each other every day. Sometimes the three of us would be talking to each other at once. And we were talking about what's going on in the industry, what's going on at the magazine. And it just felt like putting a microphone on that and kind of sharing some of that with our readers and our audience would be something that might, it might attract an audience, might be of interest to people, and it would be very natural for us to do. So, hey, we got to have ourselves a podcast.
Yeah, and that really is kind of how it kind of came around. Is we'd be on these meetings, these long meetings, and then a lot of times it would end up with me, Rich, and Cecilia after the meeting, just talking about stuff, and even news stories that were coming up, and we were just always having these very engaging, interesting conversations. And then one day, we just kind of finally decided that, you know what, let's just record ourselves. Let's get on the phone or on the Skype or the computer or whatever, and let's just talk and record it. And we put a little more structure to it, of course, but it was engaging, and it was something that we wanted to do, and it's something that Miss Cecilia Galvin, who unfortunately, if you remember back around in the episode 30s, somewhere in the 30s, I believe, she got through about 30 some shows with us. And unfortunately, she passed away kind of suddenly. And we have if you really want to learn more about Cecilia, we'll play a little bit of episode 1 here in just a second. But if you would like to learn a little bit more about her and some of the contributions she's done to the show, we did a great tribute episode tour where we had lots of colleagues on to discuss their past with her and what she meant to them. And we all had great stories to share. And she was a wonderful person, and I love the fact that even 30 70 episodes later, we're still talking about her, and we're still trying to make her a part of the show because she was a very important part of our lives, and the three of us together was just magical. The show's still good from what I hear. People tell us they still love to listen.
Thank you, folks.
And hopefully watch over time. But I love it when we get a lot of guests on these days to talk to, because sometimes 3 is the right number for this kind of stuff, and we'll have more of that as we go forward. So, was there anything about Cecilia you'd like to say, or any quick thing you want to share while I pull up the episode 1 audio?
I mean, honestly, the audio from earlier episodes of the podcast is the best way to do justice to her, because it was just a lot of fun hanging out with her under any circumstances, and including on the podcast. She just had her own take on things, and we all still she passed away in June of 2017, and so it's been a while at this point. We all miss her on a daily basis, and the opportunity we had to speak with her.
Yeah. All right. So I think the only way I know how to do this is I'm just going to start the audio, and we'll let the mic kind of pick it up here. And we'll we will listen in to so it was called episode 001. Oh, it was an hour. We've always been around we're a little longer now. We've had some pretty epic shows, but the first show we hit an hour pretty much on the mark. Is this thing on also the audio I'll point out too in the first episode is a little rougher compared to the second. I had a terrible headset that I was using at the time, and we fixed that for episode 2, but it is what it is. Please listen to a few minutes of episode 1. Welcome to Channelpro Weekly, episode 001, recorded March 10th, 2016. Is this thing on? Hello, everyone, and welcome to Channelpro Weekly, episode 001, the very first Channelpro podcast. It's been a long time in the making, and hopefully we can, that didn't come out very well, but it's been a long time.
Hopefully we can make it worth your while, worth your listening.
Yeah, so I think it'd probably help if we introduce ourselves first, and then kind of talk a little bit about what the whole point of this is. So my name is Matt Whitlock. I am the technology editor and online guy for Channelpro. I do mostly the online stuff and geeky stuff. And I'm 35. I live in the Chicagoland area. And I'm all about the tech stuff. And I'm going to be kind of serving as the host for these shows going forward with my two excellent cohorts, Rich Freeman, senior news editor. Say hi, Rich.
Hello there.
Rich, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, as you say, I'm the senior news editor, which means I am responsible for keeping an eye on what's happening in the technology world, specifically with respect to the SMB channel, and getting as much of that news out to you, our readers and listeners, on our website on a daily basis. I spend a lot of time out on the road at conferences and events, talking to vendors, talking to channel pros, and basically keeping my finger on the SMB channel's pulse.
And I'm Cecilia Galvin, and I am the executive editor of Channelpro SMB. I've been with the magazine pretty much since the beginning, and I'm very excited to be doing this podcast today. A little bit about me. No, you don't want to know a little bit about me. But really what my main role here is I keep the trains running on time, pretty much. I'm the keeper of the schedule.
I would also say queen of the channel, too. And as far as Channelpro is concerned, everyone needs to know there would be no Channelpro without Cecilia Galvin. She's like one of the greatest editors on the planet. She's got her finger in everything, and she does just a phenomenal job.
More. Tell me more.
And of course, Rich, I don't want to downplay Rich's role here. Rich is one of the early ones. He actually kind of helped found the magazine as a consultant. Isn't that right, Rich?
That's absolutely right. Yeah. Michael Siggins, our publisher, and I launched the magazine back in 2007. I've been affiliated with it ever since, but I've really only become a full-time part of the Channelpro team this year. But it's been very exciting.
And I have
happy to have you.
I totally agree. And I haven't been around quite as long as you guys have. I've been on the team, 3 or 4 years now, I think, somewhere in that neighborhood. But I was kind of working with Channelpro as a contractor, helping them with some online stuff, and things kind of just evolved from there. And they brought me on board to kind of help migrate them into a new website and get the online portion of Channelpro up to snuff. So if anybody visits our website, channelpronetwork.com, that's all kind of developed mostly by me, and as well as our event site and a whole bunch of other things that we do. So I think that's a pretty good intro of us. I'm sure that our listeners will get to know a little more about us over the weeks to come. So Channelpro Weekly, the goal here is that we want to do a podcast that kind of brings Channelpro directly to your ears.
we want to get inside your head, so we know that.
All right, we'll take a stop there, and if you want to listen to more of episode 1, it's still available today. You can just listen to it directly on channelpronetwork.com. We'll put a link in our show notes, and I'll put a link in the chat if you want to check that out in the chat. Here's the link. We talked about doing this episode 001. So you got to hear a little bit about Cecilia and her contribution, and she was just always a joy to work with. And I want to tell just one story about her because I always love this story, and I'll let you tell it because I think you were talking to her husband at the time. But apparently, she loved doing the show. We even knew she did. Go ahead and tell that story.
Well, what her husband told us basically is, I mean, all week long she would remind him, I'm doing a podcast 4 o'clock or whatever it was, and just clear out everybody. You're gonna have to go pick up the kids because podcast 4 o'clock. And if they were sitting at the dinner table, basically, or whatever, when it was podcast time, it's all she had to do was say podcast, and she was up and out of there. And it was, I think for all of us, it was kind of a high point of the week, basically. I mean, it's kind of like what we were just saying before, is what we wanted to do with the podcast was recreate the experience of hanging out with each other. And so, we're all based in different cities and traveling around and doing different things. But, this is sort of an opportunity to hang out together a little bit. And she, she so loved people and being with people and being with us in particular. So it was like a highlight of her week, and nothing got in between Cecilia and the podcast.
That is the truth. So definitely go and check out episode 1 and all the other earlier episodes. One of the things that I love to tell people about our show is that we talk about the news and some stuff that is a little bit more timely, but we also have some really great discussions about some very meaty topics that there are things in episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5 that you would still get a lot of value out of listening. So don't think that this is like only good today. There's a lot of great stuff in a lot of those old episodes, great interviews, great discussions with between the 3 of us and guests and other topics. So don't be afraid to go back and listen to a lot of those older episodes. You'll really get a lot out of them. And that's not just coming from me. I've actually had a lot of people who listen say that to me, like, yeah, I discovered the podcast, a few weeks ago, like episode 80 or whatever. And they're like, I've gone back and listened to, a whole bunch of the early ones, and they're still great. They probably skip through the news a little bit because 2-year-old news is 2-year-old news. But you can get into some really, really excellent discussions and topics. And of course, we have had some really funny discussions over the years, and we'll have more funny discussions. Definitely check out the tribute episode with Cecilia. Pick out some of the better off the rails discussions. I think the one where we first discussed the goats is on there, and a whole bunch of other. When we got her to cluck like a chicken, was really totally unexpected. That was the one I almost fell out of my chair laughing so hard. So we have a lot of fun. And we still try to obviously have a lot of fun here on Channelpro Weekly. So make sure you tell your friends about us and join us every week. And now we can do other funny things because we're on video.
Sight gags, people.
Sight gags. All right. So on that note, why don't we go ahead and we'll take a break.
Okay.
When we come back, we're gonna go into. I'm gonna make sure your mic is muted so people don't hear us planning the next segment here. But we're gonna set up for the last segment here. I do have a museum pick that I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna do a tech pick. Things that I have here that I'm excited to talk about. I hope I haven't done this one in the past. I don't think I have.
Okay.
I really hope I haven't. I think we've talked a little bit about it in passing, but never actually like as a museum pick. So I'm pretty sure. And you got to see it earlier, so you'll know what I'm going to talk about in a minute. So we're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Stick around. We'll be right back. All right, and we are back with part 3 of Channelpro Weekly. It's in this segment we have some regular end of the show features that we do, and I want to come up with some other new regular features, which I think we'll be able to do since we have a video format. But we've always wanted to get Q&A involved, so we'll take time out every episode and take live Q&A from anybody who's watching at the time. We know a lot of people aren't going to watch live because you guys are very busy. Channel pros are very, very busy people, and an audio format certainly seems to suit them better. But also, if you didn't know, we do have an email address. It's podcast@channelpronetwork.com. We also have the Facebook and the Twitter. So if you want to ask a question, please, the best way to make sure it goes right to us right away is to send an email to that email address, podcast@channelpronetwork.com. And we'd love to answer those questions or address. We said something about a story that you want to know more about or have your own take. We'd be happy to discuss that on the show. And of course, if you're watching live, we'll be watching the chat live, making sure that we're involving you in the show. So that's another regular thing I think you're going to start seeing us do more and more every week. I also do a museum pick and a tech pick. We used to do Where's Joel? Since we're kind of looking back on some of the things that we've done. We're trying to tell people about the Where's Joel segment.
Well, the Joel in Where's Joel refers to Joel Zadespinner. He is the associate publisher of Channelpro magazine. Now I talk regularly about how much travel I do. He is constantly on the road, Joel. I mean, truly something like 40, 45, 48 weeks out of the year. It's that crazy. And so we just thought it would be kind of fun to have a segment on the podcast where we would talk about, well, where is Joel this week? What city is he in this week? And we actually early on in the history of the podcast, we're encouraging people to send us their picture of Joel. Take a selfie with Joel and let us know your latest Joel sighting. So that was a regular feature of the show for a long time.
It was. We did it a long time. We eventually cut that. Not only because we wanted to do more with it, and we wanted to have Joel. We did have Joel on once to talk about travel tips, which I think was kind of fun. When we originally thought about Where's Joel, we wanted to have him call in on the show and tell us where he was and what he was up to, and but being on the road as much as he is a very, very busy person. So we wanted to do more with it, and if we can ever work it out, maybe we'll bring something like that back. But I wanted to have him involved because I think it'd be a lot more interesting if people got to know Joel as well as kind of follow around the country and do that kind of thing. But that was a fun thing we did for a while. Have we done any other regular kind of features? I think that's probably it.
Well, at the end of the show, there's the museum pick and the tech pick, and we used to do the Where's Joel, and then there's just the in case you missed it.
Right. And that's the other regular thing we do where Rich talks about every week he does a post called In Case You Missed It in conjunction with Mr. James Gaskin, where they kind of round up a lot of the stories that we can't cover everything in full detail on the site every week, full write-ups on every story. But we do keep track of the news, and then we kind of do a roundup at the end of the week for the stories that we weren't able to really dive into, but at least we're still able to kind of keep you informed on those and get them available for you to read. So he talks about those, and then he also he does his weekly preview where he puts on his turban and gets out a crystal ball, but that's at his office at home. So you won't see the turban or crystal ball this week, but he'll do his best to channel the future as best he can and tell you what's going to happen.
I gotta find a portable turban and crystal ball, because
I don't know if they let you go through TSA with a turban, or do turbans have to be checked?
I was going to say I haven't actually tested that before, but I mean, if the darn crystal ball works, I should be able to anticipate if I'm telling the future.
I thought it was the channel ball crystal. Isn't it only channel related stuff, or does it predict the future in general?
Well, I suppose we could find out. I could ask it who wins the Chiefs win tonight, folks. If they do, we know.
We know.
Yeah.
And the real question is, are the Chiefs playing tonight? Could you perhaps look and find next week's Powerball numbers? That would be really nice.
Maybe more valuable to people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Only tell them to me, though.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and dive into our museum and tech picks. So these are related. So we've talked about various mice over the years. Some very important ones in the past from Microsoft, and a few from Logitech, some historical ones. We've talked about in relation to a tech pick. I'm pretty sure I've never used this as a museum pick because I was still using it, so it wasn't in the museum in my head. But when we talked about the MX Master as a tech pick when it came out, we talked about the MX Revolution, which was a very important Logitech mouse, and I happen to have it right here. Look, this is the fun part about doing video, is that you can see, you can also see this mouse is heavily used. I just took it out of commission on Tuesday night. So here is the Logitech MX Revolution. Why do they call it the Revolution? This was a revolutionary mouse design. They added a couple things in here that had never been included in a mouse before. Now, Logitech had experimented with this free spinning wheel that you got to try out the other day on the new one, which I want to talk about. But this particular mouse was the first to have a adaptive scroll wheel for this. So you can set it to be like only ratcheting, so it has a little clicky feel, or you can set it to go free spinning, where you can like fly through a document, and you can set it to like only be on that mode. And they have had other mice before this one where you could manually select those modes. But this is the first one that kind of was sensitive to what you were doing. So as you are just moving the wheel slowly, it will stay in ratchet mode. But if you start to go fast, it will unlock and do that mega fast scrolling thing. And it was also customizable per software. So you could say, oh, when I'm in the web browser, I always want it ratcheting or always want it free spinning when I'm in Excel or whatever. So you could, but it could also just be smart. And I just use the smart auto mode. Like if I start going quick, I want it to just unlock and fly. And once you get used to that particular feature, it is really hard to let that go, because I work with a lot of big data sets in Excel, doing random things. And of course, there's always my phone always goes off, and I always mean to mute it before we start. It is so nice to be able to just fly through documents and have this great smooth scrolling experience. They also tried this side kind of, and it looks like a wheel that's on top, but it isn't actually, it's not a full wheel. As you can see, Rich, you can go ahead, you can touch it, it's all right.
Yeah,
it's more like a rocker that goes back and forth, and you can press it in, and it's a button. But they wanted to bring more control to, I'll kind of show that here, to the mouse. So using this thumb that normally just kind of sits there, and other mice had done the forward back button, but they wanted to add more controls. And this was really handy for like you could customize, of course, what you wanted to do. So I normally had it set to do zooming, like in Photoshop and other programs where I could like click zoom in, zoom out real fast with my thumb. You could also set it to horizontally scroll, although it didn't work all that great. This also could do that too. The new one that I'm going to talk about is great for the horizontal scroll, and I'll talk about that in a second. But they did so much to make this mouse customizable. It had a good weight. The sensor at the time, it's a laser mouse. It was very good at the time. One of the ways this mouse has not aged well is that the laser is not as fast as like current gaming mice and stuff. So it's a little slower mouse. It came with a charging cradle. The battery life used to be good, but after as long as I've been using this thing, you can imagine the battery was not very good anymore. But I finally put it to pasture, and I miss it. Even when we're talking about the new one that I just got, I still miss this mouse already. It was just the perfect shape for my hand. I love the mouse feel. I love the rocker. I loved where they positioned the forward and back button. Just everything about this mouse was fantastic. I loved it. I really hope that one day they do an MX Revolution 2. And they kind of did. It's called the MX Master. And the one I'm going to talk about next, which is the sequel to that one. But it is not the perfect replacement to this mouse, in my opinion. That does leave me my tech pick.
All right.
So my tech pick this week is, what do you know? It's another Logitech mouse. This one, we never actually talked about this one when it came out. Logitech unveiled, they had the Revolution, and then they didn't really have any kind of good replacement to that mouse. They had the MX, they had the performance one, which was good, but it wasn't like an exact descendant of the Revolution until they came out with the MX Master. But the MX Master had a couple problems. I want to say recently, but fairly recently released this model, which is the MX Master 2S. So you just saw the Revolution. You'll see this one has, same button layout. So it also has the adaptive ratcheting scroll wheel. It's a little louder than the other one.
Yeah.
But again, this is the suck. Like, it's not as good, but this feature is what draws me in every single time. I'm so used to that. But they did change the side. So they don't have a rocker on this one, and they put this side it's like a little wheel. Now it's not a button like the other one, but I think the goal of being able to zoom, but more importantly, horizontally scroll like in browser windows or Excel documents, this is a much better solution to that than that rocker was. But I'm gonna not give them kudos. If you look to see where the forward and back buttons are, you see this is an exercise in style, not necessarily an exercise in function. So these are placed a little bit too far back. They're a little hard. The forward button is incredibly hard to hit, and the back button is not as convenient. This mouse also does something. This has a much better sensor than that one does too. This is a great. This is their optical dark field sensor. This thing tracks on glass, on wood, on paper, on my face. I mean, it could track on your shirt, on everything. It just needs, I think it said 3 millimeters of glass. And I did take a piece of glass and test it, and it worked perfectly. So
wow.
it was thicker than 3 millimeters. It was like yay thick, but it worked great. And back in the day, like an old optical or a laser mouse would never have worked on glass, but this does. So the sensor in this is amazing. This is not a gaming mouse per se. This is a functional productivity mouse. But I've done a little bit of a few minutes of gaming with it, and it worked great. They added this. This is actually where you rest your thumb as a button. So rather than having a button up here, they have this button, and this is assignable to do various stuff. But their goal here is that it also supports gestures. So you can press down with your thumb and then move the mouse up, down, left, or right, and then you can assign those movements to various functions in your computer. So like pressing it down and up could open up the start menu, for example, or minimize a window, or switch between virtual desktops, things like that. So that's a pretty cool feature. And the other thing that this supports is the Logitech Flow feature. So you can actually pair this via, you put the software and pair it to different computers, and then you can move the mouse, as long as the computer's on the same network, you can move the mouse to one edge of the screen and it'll appear on the other screen on the other computer. So you can kind of flow between different computers, kind of like there's a software tool that does a similar thing, Mouse Without Borders, or mouse Without Fences, or something. You know what I'm talking about. And I haven't actually had a chance to test that out yet, but I've heard it works fine. So that's kind of a neat feature. I don't know if I have anything else to say. Oh, it doesn't come with a charging cradle, but it comes with a USB cable, which actually, I have to say, I really liked the charging dock. But over the years, I've learned that, and this is probably why they got rid of the charging dock, is because if the battery does die on you, if you have to put it in a dock, you can't use it. We're here, you can plug it in, and then it becomes a wired mouse while it charges.
And if so, I mean, I've got the world's most ordinary mouse that I travel with, and I can take that with me. I don't have to bring a charging cradle. I mean, that just takes a battery, an ordinary disposable battery. Yeah, if you need a charging cradle to charge the mouse, it's not coming with you on the road. Right,
exactly. Now they say the battery on this is supposed to last for, I think it's like 70 days between charges. We'll see. My other battery lasted about 3 hours between charges. in the last like month here. So any improvement there is going to be good. And I will like that I'll be able to use the mouse while it charges, because I always forget to plug the stupid thing in. And with the other one, I had to have another mouse. I saw it on my desk, like a basic mouse that I could plug in while my other one charged. And I like this. This is a little bigger than the Revolution. Like I said, it's not a perfect replacement. I think the perfect replacement to this would be the Revolution body. I like this idea of the thumb pad and button and gestures. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see them move this wheel and return to a back and forward button that's a little easier to hit. And maybe shrink the size just a touch, but I'm not, 6'4" and have gigantic hands. So I know size is always going to be like, well, you're going to please some and not others. So the size of the Revolution was ideal for me. This is a hair on the big side, but overall, it's a fantastic mouse. It's got a lot of great productivity tools. If you really like the flow kind of feature, if you're using it amongst different machines, it's easy to use. It's Bluetooth and it comes with a wireless unifying dongle. So just by pressing a button on the bottom, you can quickly you compare it to 3 different machines Bluetooth, or 2 machines Bluetooth and 1 wireless, and quickly switch between them by hitting that button. So it's really nice if you're a multiple machine user.
Yeah.
So it does a lot. MSRP is $99. I picked mine up on sale for. It was a birthday present for my wife. But the birthday present for my wife, I handed my wife a box and I said, "Here, give this to me for my birthday." And then when I opened it up, I'm like, "Oh, how did you know it was the exact thing I wanted?" Man, got to make it easy on the wife, right? So great mouse. I do really like it a lot. I do highly recommend it. So check that out. That is my museum pick, the MX Revolution, which I will put in my museum and proudly display using. I'm going to try to clean it up and use it this side, because this side just does not look very good. Hopefully, I think the material on the new mouse won't do that. See, this one got really nasty after a while. And of course, we're going to pause. We'll pause for the phone to ring. Hang on one. Rich, take it away, Rich.
These are the delights of live broadcasting, ladies and gentlemen. And actually, what you don't know, because up until now we've always pre-recorded and edited these things, is this actually happens on every episode of Channelpro Weekly. We just cut it out normally. This week you got to hear it live. Yeah. So we lost your camera.
Yes, we did. But I'll go back to us. Your camera was gone. There we go. Well, I'll just leave it on this cam. All right. So yeah, every single week, it's either my cell phone will go off at some point from my wife, and then it will either be my house phone or your house phone or both. And we have the same house phone, so it's like the same sound every time. But it bar none. And I might have to move that phone base out of my office. Yeah. I think that's what we're gonna have to do, and you'll have to unplug it and call it a day. So. Yes, these are the things we will tune and tweak as we move to this live video format to make it more enjoyable for you. So anyway, Rich, if you were going to look back at the week and tell us what happened, I bet you could do that with some amount of accuracy.
Me? Absolutely not. James Gaskin? Yes. And every Friday, in fact, on channelpronetwork.com, in case you missed it post, he does exactly that. Looks back at the week that was, rounds up a bunch of stories you may or may not have heard about, summarizes them for you. Those this week will include Avnet's move into IoT services by acquiring SoftWeb, a pretty interesting partnership between Symantec and Fortinet on cloud security, and also the results of an interesting study about just how much time people are spending at the office on online shopping. You'll have to look it up to see how much. I actually found it a little bit surprising. Now, looking ahead to next week, we're really kind of closing in on the holidays. Nothing much happening on the conference circuit. Not a whole lot happening that I know about under NDA in the news world. I will say my inbox has been filling up for weeks now, and it's actually starting to accelerate with predictions for 2019 from various vendors. And I will be posting probably multiple roundups of predictions from leading vendors about what to expect next year. So be on the lookout for that.
If I were to make any, all right. So, Rich, if you're going to make any prediction for 2019, what would you predict?
Security, folks. If there's any one word you're going to hear more than any other on this podcast in 2019, it's probably going to be security.
I think after December 31st, my prediction is that many calendars will be thrown away and many new ones purchased. The calendar industry, this is the time you want to invest.
So so the January 1st is whatever, Black Monday for the calendar industry. Yeah,
and there will be bacon.
And there will be bacon. Thank goodness.
Thank goodness for bacon, folks. All right. Anything else to do for our live show here? We've thought about having a Nerf war, but it would probably just be embarrassing. So we won't do that. But we are definitely going to have a lot of fun with you guys going forward here on our live streaming. And if hopefully you like it, and we'll take part in joining us when we do these live shows in the future.
December 20th, 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon on the West Coast, where I will be. Tune in live, and we will be back at you in audio too.
Awesome. So what can you do to follow us here at Channelpro Weekly? So now we are going to set up a Channelpro Weekly playlist here on our Channelpro Network YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe to that playlist. Actually, you can subscribe to the Channelpro Network channel in general, and then you could know when 5-minute roundup is happening and some other things. But definitely keep an eye there. You could follow us on Facebook. We're Channelpro Network on Facebook. We're at Channelpro SMB on Twitter. If you want to follow Rich on Twitter, he is
at Rich Free,
and I am at Matt Whitlock on Twitter, spelled just how it sounds. And we put all these links that we're talking about every week into our show notes. And I do have for those who are listening, I have a gallery that has lots of pictures. I actually had a problem for a while. I didn't realize that it was only showing like 32 pictures for a long time. That's fixed now. You can actually see all the pictures now of all the various things that we've talked about for the museum pick. I take a picture and I try to at some point do a little write-up about each one. That's at channelpronetwork.com/MGP for Matt's gallery picks. So you can check that out as well. So this is fun. Thanks for joining. For those who poked in here in the live broadcast, and we'll get an edited version of the show up into the new Channelpro Weekly playlist going forward. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you want to subscribe to the audio channel, you can find us pretty much anywhere podcasts are aggregated. Definitely you'll find us in iTunes. We're in the Google Play podcast section. We're in Stitcher, numerous other services. I'm convinced unless I've been trying to get for months to get us into Spotify. It's like a 6-month ordeal. Really, they say that they will add you even if you don't use like one of these other services. Like if you're self-hosted, good luck getting into Spotify. If you use one of these other services, it's all automated. People don't actually work at Spotify.
Turns out
it's all robots,
right?
And they only have a set function of programs that they can run, and adding a podcast that is not in like one of those other big podcast hosting services is not one of their functions. So one day, someday, maybe we'll be in Spotify. I haven't actually looked in a while. I just kind of gave up. So maybe we're there. I don't know. But if you have a favorite podcast app, we also have a general RSS link that you can put in any podcast app and pull the show down every single week. And that's the best way. That's the best way to do it. And if you want to watch live, we'll have the upcoming show times of when we're going to be doing live broadcasts up on the landing page. We'll get that URL to you guys soon, and on the channelpronetwork.com homepage. Of course, you can also just subscribe to the channel, and you can just watch the live shows, not live, but we'll keep the videos up in YouTube as well. And who knows, maybe Vimeo and other places. We're going to explore the video verse here as we go forward. So if it was a rough show, we know, a little different. Next show, we'll be improving, getting a little better with the video every show. But this is a little weird because we're here in person, so it's a little different. But good times. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you all next show next week, episode 101. See you then.